How's it going, all you Minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for your advanced look at the latest Marvel Gallery edition, The Amazing Spider-Man One More Day. So, join me. And welcome back, everybody. So, before going any further, I do want to thank David Gabriel and the folks at Marvel for sending us an advance copy of this latest gallery edition. This one is due out in the book market and direct market on May 16th or 17th, depending on where you get your books. So this is the latest Marvel Gallery edition. It joins stories like Weapon X, Warlock by Jim Starlin, Spider-Man The Wedding Album, Venom by David Michelinie and Todd McFarlane, Avengers Kree-Skrull War, The Death of Captain Marvel, Contest of Champions, Giant Size X-Men, and God Loves Man Kills, and so on. So far, those have all been really classic stories or stories that have had amazing artwork or artwork that changed the course of the characters. This one here is probably known as the most controversial story featuring the character of Spider-Man, the Arachnite. So I can't talk about this book without going into spoilers, so we will get into that in a little bit. But first of all, if you've never seen a gallery edition, it is a hardcover. It is art on board. There is no dust jacket. It is bigger than your omnibus editions. Usually, though, it's slimmer than those Omni editions, like so. Because some of these contain 4, some of them contain just 1 graphic novel. Some of them contain just some of them are like the Wedding Album. I want to say it's over almost 300 pages. This one here contains 4 different comics. So let's take a look again at the spine right there. Marvel, Spider-Man One More Day, Straczynski, Quesada, Mickey, and Eisenoff. And that's the colorist Richard Eisenoff. One of the most talked about Spider-Man stories of all time from creative masterminds J. Michael Straczynski and Joe Quesada. Here's what's collected. The retail price, $44.99. Rated T, and then the Marvel logo. And who is this guy? All right. So, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, this is one of the most controversial, and as the back of the book says, one of the most talked about books, whether it's good or bad. So I can't talk about this book without going into spoilers. So just in case you've never read this or you've wondered about this, I always suggest to people to read it on your own, despite of what someone on YouTube like myself or anybody on the internet tells you this is the worst story ever. I think it's good for people to judge it for themselves. So you can find out how right everybody is or how wrong they are, and you're like, man, what are you guys talking about? This is one of the greatest Spider-Man stories ever. So if you have read this, I am curious. Leave it in the comments down below what you think of this story, and I'll ask some questions towards the end. Now, again, spoilers for this, and not just this, but a little bit of the setup, because we have to talk about the status quo of Spider-Man going into this book. So maybe a little bit of what happened in Civil War if you've not read that, or mainly what happened in the storyline Spider-Man Back in Black that was contained, well, partially contained in the JMS Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 2. So just in case, spoilers moving forward. Alright, let's get this open and talk about it. Alright, let's go ahead and crack this open. We have some black end paper right there. And Spider-Man One More Day featuring our 2 big characters that play the biggest part in this. Beautiful artwork here by Joe Quesada. I love his art during this era, mainly because it's not inked by Jimmy Palmiotti, but it is inked by Danny Mickey, and then Joe Quesada himself inking some of the, I believe it's the final issue 545. So here we have J. Michael Straczynski, Joe Quesada writing issue 545, and we'll talk a little bit about how this came to be and why J. Michael Straczynski may not have been credited for issue 545. Pencils by Joe Quesada. Inking by Danny Mickey and Joe Quesada. Richard Eisenoff doing the coloring, with Dean White doing Amazing Spider-Man 545. It seems like 545 was the one that people were like, nah, I don't want to do that one. So this gives you a brief synopsis as to what's happened previously, taking pictures from inside of this book. Still 399 cents. So Collecting Amazing Spider-Man 544 and 545, Sensational Spider-Man number 41, and Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 24. It also has material from Marvel Spotlight One More Day. So 544 is the issue that kicks it off. So how did all this come about? Well, this was the brainchild of the editorial staff at Marvel Comics, and mainly Joe Quesada. I mean, he's been through several interviews talking about how he wanted to make changes when he became editor-in-chief at Marvel. And there were specifically 3 changes that he wanted to make. One of them was having the X-Men titles be connected more, talking to each other more, and getting rid of so many mutants, such as the whole mutant town that was kind of created through the pages of Grant Morrison's New X-Men. And that kind of, yeah, that did happen in the pages of House of M. And then he wanted to go back to the classic 60s style of storytelling, where superheroes would just run into each other in the middle of the street and get into fights because of some kind of misunderstanding. Hence Civil War. Then, the biggest change that he wanted to make was to the character of Spider-Man. He wanted to take Spider-Man back to those bachelor days, the days before he was with MJ, the days before he was married, because he said that tying him down to a marriage limited the amount of stories that you could tell, that writers could tell, featuring the character of Spider-Man. Now, whether you agree or not with that, it's not like it hasn't been done before, in a way, with the character of Gwen Stacy per se, when they did away with her character. That was one that Jerry Conway wanted to do, and a lot of people disagreed with him. And years later, we had Spider-Man and MJ. And then again, it's weird to think about this book. Like, I've only read it one time, when it came out. And it's been collected in standard size hardcover, it's been collected in a premiere hardcover, it's been collected in trade paperbacks, and it's part of the omnibus, which we'll do a comparison to the art here in a little bit. But I haven't read it since then, and then when this came in, I was like, well, it's been, oh my gosh, I want to say at least 15 years or so since this came out, right? Because then we had Brand New Day after this. Let's give it another shot. I remember liking the artwork. Let's see what happens. I still feel like this left me with the same kind of emotional gut punch, if you will, like it did when it first came out. And it's one of these stories that the character so well, and it's not like Spider-Man is my favorite character, but that this isn't the way that he would approach it. So, in case you're here and you don't care about spoilers, what happens is that in the pages of Civil War, remember when I said I have to talk a little bit about Civil War? Spider-Man unmasks himself. He joins Tony's side, and he's against Captain America, and he's like, here I am, world. My name is Peter Parker. And that leads into a lot of different stories, like the funny, horrible thing that happened to J. Jonah Jameson. But then something happens where the villains are like, wait a minute, I've been bamboozled by this kid all these years, such as the Kingpin, even though the Kingpin hasn't appeared as a Spider-Man bad guy. So the Kingpin ends up hiring a no-name sniper, not a professional killer like he usually does, like somebody like Bullseye, to go and kill Peter Parker. And the sniper tries to snipe Peter Parker from across the building, and Peter Parker dodges it and moves Mary Jane out of the way. Unfortunately, it hits Aunt May. And I think the last thing she says is Peter, and she goes into a coma. Now, he was pissed, and he goes after the Kingpin, and that's what the Back in Black storyline is. He's wearing his black outfit again, but mainly wearing that because it had ties to the Spider-Man 3 movie that was coming out at the time. But regardless, it was interesting to see him wearing the black outfit again. He was angry. And then after that big fight with the Kingpin, this is where this comes into play. So he comes back to the hospital, and the doctor's like, look, you guys are on the run. After the whole Civil War thing, you're a wanted man because you sided with Captain America in the end. You turned against Iron Man. As a matter of fact, that's kind of what happens here, where he realizes, wait a minute, that's right. I unmasked myself because I went to side with Iron Man. I would never have done that if I didn't side with Iron Man. It's his fault. I'm going to go and get him to pay for Aunt May's medical bills, because the doctor's like, look, you're wanted people. You don't have insurance. You don't even have cards, ID cards. We can't keep your aunt here. Sorry. Which is really weird, but that's just the way it was written. So Peter goes and confronts Iron Man, and Iron Man's like, I ain't paying for squat, dude. What are you talking about? This is your fault just as much as it is mine. So they get into a big fight. And that's pretty much chapter 1. And then eventually, I'm not going to go through the entire book, I promise. Eventually, he sends Jarvis to go and pay the bill, and the doctor's like, hey, you can afford to keep her on life support, but that's the only thing that's keeping her alive. I'm sorry, kid, there's nothing me or any other doctors can do. So, Spider-Man's like, okay, cool. I got friends. I'm a superhero. So he goes and visits Doctor Strange, and he goes through this whole journey. It's a little bit of a time travel journey about great power comes great responsibility. And again, I've really enjoyed this artwork by Joe Quesada and Danny Mickey doing the inks here. So Doctor Strange is like, no, kid, I can't help you. That's not the way it works. Contrary to what the movies may have shown you. Now, Doctor Strange might not have been able to help him, but he does run into this strange little red-headed girl that says, he was right, you can't change that. You can't change the way things happened, but I can. So in the next issue, there are 3 people that he runs into after meeting this little girl. He meets this guy that develops video games. He meets an older gentleman that was bullied in high school and gives him this whole story about how he became a rich millionaire and hired all those bullies as janitors to just kind of have the last laugh. And then he runs into this lady right here, this mysterious lady. And this mysterious lady has a big revelation for him that, look, the nerd you were talking to that develops video games, that's an alternate reality version of you. And so is that old man. Those are all alternate reality versions of you. I am Mephisto. And I can save your aunt. And what he wants is their love. Is Peter Parker and Mary Jane's love. Because he lives on the misery of others. Like, he thrives on the misery of humanity. So if he can take their love away, if he can take their marriage away, he will save Aunt May. Which leads us to the final part right here, 545. Now, remember when I said that Joe Quesada's baby, this is kind of what he wanted? By this point, J. Michael Straczynski was just not into it. He did not agree with this, and he kind of wanted his name off the book, which is why Joe Quesada plotted this right here. I think the story went that Joe Quesada actually drew this because J. Michael Straczynski said, hey, this is your baby. You should come out of retirement from drawing and draw these issues. If you want it to end this way, you should do it. So there was this whole, thing between the editor-in-chief at Marvel and then the writer at Marvel Comics, who was hired to come, and one of the first tasks he had when he started writing Spider-Man was to put Mary Jane and Peter Parker together, because they had been broken up during Howard Mackie and John Byrne's era. But the one more day is that they get to live one more day together and decide, what do we do? I can't lose you, MJ. And MJ's like, you got to do the right thing. And it's like a trip down memory lane. Mephisto shows up and he's like, so what's it gonna be? So in the end, the marriage is erased. And the last thing they say to each other is, I love you, Mary Jane Parker, and I love you, Peter Parker. And you can find out the details as to what kind of deal they worked out with Mephisto, but you can probably guess. And surprisingly, who exactly was the one that said something to Mephisto? And then we get this nice spread page of all these memories, some from a long time ago, and then some from just recently or the arc before this one. Now, with their love going away, this is where Mephisto reveals that he was the lady, which we all knew when he transformed, but he was also the little girl. And who this little girl turns out to be the possible daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Parker. But because their marriage is gone, ceases to exist, she also ceases to exist. And then the marriage is gone. Face the tiger, you just hit the jackpot. So Peter Parker wakes up, and Aunt May's alive. And he's also a little bit younger, and there's a couple of other changes that happen to his status quo that lead into Brand New Day. So He looks a little bit younger. He has a different position. He runs into Mary Jane. They don't speak. He sees his friend Harry Osborn right there. Again, changing the status quo of some of these characters. Now that I won't go into detail as to where he's been. And one of the most important things that happens here, though, or at least to me, is that when they cheer to a brand new day, which is the kickstart of the next arc, is you can see his web shooter right there, meaning that he has to have the web shooters in order to put out his webbing. There was a storyline that was done that was so weird, that made him have organic web shooters. But now he has to have those. And here is a forward by Stan Lee, 2008. My gosh, it almost has been 15 years. It was the year I got married. Here are your variant covers all the way in the back. Very dramatic variant covers. And then textless covers. And this is the spotlight right here on Brand New Day, interviewing Joe Quesada, the idea behind it. And then, of course, what to expect from Brand New Day. And here is an interview with JMS, who was the writer at the time. And we'll do a little comparison here in a few to the omnibus right here. Top 5 things JSM didn't get a chance to do. John Michael Straczynski. I thought it was JMS. Okay, that might be a misprint. Do more teaching with Peter, making Gwen... Oh. Yeah, so don't read that because that spoils another storyline. And then here's the afterworth of Amazing Spider-Man 545. Now, one of the other rumors was that Joe Quesada also got Jeff Loeb, Brian Michael Bendis, and Ed Brubaker involved in issue 545. Like, how exactly would the marriage end? Now, this book has 136 pages, and it has sewn binding. The paper stock is this thick, glossy paper. This one is printed at the iMac printer. I've seen some printed at the Donnelly printer. This kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like. Here, actually, let's look at it inside of the comic right here, where he jumps out. Yeah, let's look at this one right here to look at a little bit of the gutter loss that you might get right there. And it's a little bit of gutter loss, but it is there. Let's compare it to that of the omnibus right here. This one printed at the iMac printer too. So you do get a little bit more artwork than you do here. Here you have to hold down to see his entire right shoulder. Over here, the way that it's bound, sewn binding, you can see actually all of it. That's pretty damn good. Now, just wanted to do a size comparison and also talk about how the covers are framed here. So the covers are framed in this red, fiery looking pattern. And here, there's just this white with webbing right here. Paper stock in this one is pretty thick, though. It's one of the older iMac printers. Paper stock. And, yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the pages, though. So one thing you can probably tell, you get a little bit more art over here in the gallery edition. You can see more Peter Parker's head. I'm sorry, Spider-Man's head. You can see a little more of this frame right here. You can see the entire, well, most of the circle, whereas here it's cut off. And so is part of her neck. Let's see. Just doing another quick comparison here, where you can see more of the sidewalk, more of the rain splatter, and it's just a little bit of that. Now, you probably noticed how it's framed, like each of the pages are framed, or not framed, but it's cut off right here. And that's to keep it from warping or being distorted, if you will. Because if they wanted to fill out the page up to here, then we would either be losing some artwork, or you would have to stretch out the art. And yeah, that would not be good. But let's just, let's just compare one more page. So again, a little bit more of the artwork right there with the up, and down here with that bracelet right there. Looks like a belt. To JMS from the Marvel gang. Yeah, so you get a little bit more artwork over here. There is a little of bleed through over here, but there's some over here too. So, again, I keep 2 big LED lights pointed at the books so we can get rid of shadows. The afterword is printed on black instead of white, like in the omnibus. But yeah, let's see. Actually, this is where, like in the omnibus, the textless covers are done in thumbnail size, whereas in the gallery edition, they are done in full splash pages. My feelings on One More Day. I forgot to mention that because I was talking about it. Pretty sure you can probably guess by my tone how I feel about it, but yeah, I was not a fan of this story. I didn't see Peter Parker even considering his love for his wife to save his Aunt May. Like, I understand loss, and by now he should have too. He should have learned. That is the thing about these characters, is that they progress and they evolve. He's lost his uncle. He's lost his, what some consider the love of his life with Gwen Stacy. He lost another father figure with Captain Gwen. He lost another father figure with Captain Stacy. He's lost his best friend. It's just part of life. And you gotta keep pushing yourself forward. So it was really strange. And I remember years ago, I had a podcast and I interviewed Joe Quesada. And that was one of the things I asked him. And it was before One More Day came out. I was like, is the marriage really ending? Like, this is how we're telling kids that, hey, you know, the way to be happy is to be single. Like, and I was in my 20s then. I wasn't even married. I was like, I don't know if that's the right message. And he was like, no, that's not the message we're trying to send. And I understand. But it would have been interesting. I mean, any good writer could have taken the story of a married character and given us more and more stories. I mean, we've seen that in the case of Superman. Not that DC is not guilty of rebooting that character either. But we know the stories are there and they're possible. So thank goodness for stories like Spider-Girl, Renew Your Vows. Now, if you want to know exactly how their love ended, like what was the storyline that actually ended their love? Because with this, you know, he wakes up one day and he's single. But there is an actual storyline written by Joe Quesada a little bit later called One Moment in Time. I think omit, if you will. Where it explains exactly the moment where their marriage ended. It was, you know, before they got married. You can read that for yourself. That's not available in Gallery Edition. So, now, that, as they say, is that. By the way, if you're a fan of this, more power to you. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. If you're interested in purchasing this Gallery Edition, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltzcomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcon at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this book. And of course, the spoiler review of it. Now, if you've read this, let me know what you think about the story. If you've never read this, I'm curious what has kept you from reading it. I assume people that have told you it's just the worst Spider-Man story ever. And then what do you consider the worst Spider-Man story ever? Regardless, here is the latest Gallery Edition, and it is One More Day. I would love to see other Spider-Man stories collected in this big, beautiful Gallery Edition, whether it's Kraven's Last Hunt, or more of that Todd McFarlane era, or Eric Larson era, or some of the Mark Bagley era. But anyway, what would you like to see collected? Let's keep it to just Spider-Man in Gallery Edition. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.